Once upon a time there was a little girl who was given a gift of a beautiful flower garden. It was a gift from a wise and a loving king. He knew of this little girl and wanted to make her happy. She had rich soil in which to plant the small bag of seeds that she held in her little hands. The seeds held the potential for all varieties of multicolored beautiful flowers that will fill her garden with an aroma to delight her sense of smell, colors to satisfy her eyes with visual beauty. With care she tenderly sowed the seeds, carefully arranged in a delightful design. Then the loving king caused rain showers to saturate the dry soil, and then he caused the rays of the sun to shine upon the ground. Every night it rained, and sunshine filled the days, and the flowers began to grow. A bench sat in the middle of her garden, and a small bird bath was not far from it. Here she sat basking in the warmth of the sun on her skin, smelling the flowers and viewing the roses and pansies and all the rest of her flowers in her beautiful garden. Well, one day a selfish man appeared. He heard reports of this little girl and of her love and kindness and of the tender care she gave to her garden. Now that her flowers were no longer seeds, the loving king caused the rainfall by night to cease and allow the little girl to show love herself by watering the flowers and taking over the job began by the loving king. It was this act of love that motivated the selfish man to approach the little girl. He appeared to her sad and withdrawn, a crushed man with no hope and weak. He pleaded with her to come and water his garden for him, as he couldn't do that any more. He told her that he needed her to save him from his crushed state. To his delight and satisfaction, she obliged. Every day she watered and tended to his garden, with no time left to care for her own. The selfish man kept telling the little girl how important she was to him, that her value and reason for being alive was to satisfy his needs and wants, that without her attention and concern he had no reason to live. Well, this became the little girl's sole purpose in life, to care for the selfish man. She began to reason that it was he who gave her value and importance, and without him, how he treasured her, she would become nothing and cease to exist. Many years went by. This little girl's own garden began sown with weeds and flowers that in time began to dry up. Neighbors rarely viewed her garden as they passed in their daily stroll. It was hardly noticed at all. Well, the little girl was now a grown woman. She wasn't cared for and as neglected as her own garden was. When she passed her reflection in the mirror, she saw the outline of the selfish man, and how he saw her, never seeing herself. This young woman was invisible to her own needs and wants. She became sad and dried up, her head bowed like the wilted flowers in her own garden. The selfish man continued to tell the young woman to be of value and precious. She needed to remain diligent in tending to his garden, watering it in a timely fashion and talking to the flowers that were lonely because their owner, the old man, never visited them. The wise and loving king observed the sad state the young woman was in, and he sent tender counsel to help her. Tender counsel took her hand in his and brought her to the mirror. He wiped away the false delusion that she had always gazed upon in passing. In time she saw herself, a slight woman, sad and depressed and poorly neglected. Tender counsel reminded the young woman that to the king who sent him to her, she was precious in his eyes. This was long before she met the selfish man. He helped her remember the gift of love that the loving king gave to the little girl, that the king entrusted in her care a garden of her very own to care for, and now was indeed in need of her attention. The twisted, sick illusion that was given to the little girl was slowly becoming dim, and in time this young woman began to see the harm that the selfish man caused. She went to her neglected garden and sat on the park bench in the middle of the garden and began to cry. She now saw that the loving king had loved and valued her so much that he gave her a precious gift to care for, and she began to remember the small bag of seeds and the rain at night and the sun during the day, and how she delighted in sitting on this bench, watching the birds bathe in the bird bath, the scent of flowers and the visual beauty of the flowers that were growing. Oh, how she appreciated that trust that the king had in her to cease the rain so she could show love to her garden by tending and caring for it on her own. The tears flowed down her cheek as she began to remember. "I'm sorry," she said to the wilted rose, "for failing to show you the love you deserved from me." She saw the birds flying above her, dirty and in need of a bath. Now the young woman began to change. Every day she went out at daybreak to tend to her neglected garden. It was watered, and the bird bath was filled with clean, fresh water. In time, months passed, and the garden was now beautiful again. Birds happily splashed in the sparkling water, and the sweet smell of flowers filled the air. Neighbors began to stop on their daily stroll to gaze at the garden. In time, conversations began, and new friendships developed. The selfish man's garden began to decay. When the king sent tender counsel to talk to him, he refused to listen. He also was given a gift from the little king. But unlike the little girl, selfish man hated the king and despised the gift that is why he lied to the little girl and manipulated her to take care of his garden, thus exploiting her tender compassion. Selfish man in reality hated love and used it for his own evil agenda. He wanted the little girl to forget about the king and that she was really precious and loved. Thanks to tender counsel, his evil plan was uncovered, and with the strength from the loving king and tender counsel, this young woman grew and blossomed like her flower garden and lived a life of love and joy and discovered many loving friends. The moral of this story is that we all have been given a precious gift from our loving Creator Jehovah. We are wonderfully made. Each one of us has unique gifts that no other person on the face of the earth possessed. We have our own hopes and desires and abilities to use. We are the garden, and we must care for it and water it for it to grow. Everyone has their own garden and their own responsibility given to us by our loving Creator. We all have value and are loved for being ourselves. Tend to your own garden, and let no selfish man make you accept his illusion that to be of value is to tend to him. The end.